Now we have this nice class that has constructors, a destructor, and this method to roll. Other standard methods that are just really standard with classes are getters and setters. So we're going to write these now. Now, what are getters and setters? Well, notice that we have two private data members that main doesn't have access to. If we try to access these, so let's do my first dice and try to access, notice it only tells us about roll, but let's say no, what we want is value, and it sees it there. So let's say we want that value, right? We want to know what the value of that variable is, that data member. Notice that we get a red squiggly line. And if we run this, we're going to get a compile error because this is not available in main. This is a private data member. In fact, it tells us that int dice value, it tells us it's associated with this class, is private within this context. And that's exactly what this private designation means. It means it's not available outside the class. Within the class, so any of the class methods have access to these private data members. Notice it was no problem to get them. But main is outside of the class, right? Main just uses the class. It creates objects of this type, but it isn't part of the class. It's just using it, and it does not have access to the private data members. So this won't work, and we don't want to do that. So let's get rid of that error, and we'll be back to where we can compile. So it is standard practice for your data members to be private. And as you're developing classes, that's an important part of encapsulation, is that you keep your data members under your control. When you write this data type, you want to supervise what the values of these can be, and so that your dice works like a dice, or whatever class you're creating, it works like that object is meant to work like. So you want to keep these private, but you want to get the user access to them. It's like, no, you can know what the value of the dice is, and you can know the number of sides. Like, I'm okay with that. I want to supervise them, so you can't have direct access to them, but I'll let you know what they are and how available they are. So we can create methods. The getters, what they do is they return the value of these private data members. They just say, sure, if you want to know what it is, just come and get it. I'll give it to you. So these return, in this case, we're going to have an int, right? And we can use get. Now, the normal way, number of sides, and this is the way that a standard method would work, right? A function name or a member method all have the same naming conventions, which is capital letters. Camel case, start with a capital and then use an uppercase for all of the individual words. There is an exception in the case of getters and setters. So getters and setters are So this method is going to return an int because that's what type the data member is. And we're just going to start it with get, and then we can say what they're getting. So we're getting the number of sides, and we don't need any parameters to do that. We're just simply going to return it. We can also get the value. Now notice we don't put an underscore on it. That's just our private way of keeping track of those data members, but these are just methods that will return those private data members. So in here, we can do the implementation for these. Again, I'm going to use the class name and the scope resolution operator and come up, and now I'm going to say a number of sides. And what number of sides needs to do is simply return number of sides. And because we're a class member method, right? We're related to, this method is related to the dice class. It has direct access to it, and it can return the value of that. It's not returning the variable, it's just returning the value of it, right? And we can do the other one. I want to start with the class name, scope resolution operator, and then it gives me the choice. Now I want get value. And then I can return the value. Now, let me tell you, there's some different naming conventions for getters and setters. So, like the Google naming convention is to just name them like a variable. So just be lowercase with underscores and not even use the get or the set in front of it. So that's a different way to name these. Another way is to keep the get on there, but to name them still lowercase. So you'll see a variety of ways to name them. I'm going to go ahead and name them just using the way we're naming functions and methods. So I'm just going to use that for now, but know that there's a variety of ways. There's some variance in how you name getters and setters. So just be aware of that. Now a setter, well, let's do the getter for now, and let's see what that means. That means now in main, remember we tried to get value before, so now we can see out my first dice is, and now what I can do is print it out. And the way I do it is by using the name of the variable, my first dice dot get value. And I can print that out. I can also print out my first dice has how many sides? My first dice dot get number of sides. All right, now I can also, so that's my first dice. I can also do this with my second dice. So it's going to have the same label, or close to the same label, but now I'm going to call it with my second dice, and I'm going to say my second dice has, and again I'm going to call it with the other object, my second dice, and I'm going to put an endel in the middle of these. All right, so let's go ahead and run it. And notice how this now gives us access to know those values. And these are public methods, so I can call them anytime I want. It doesn't give me access to the actual data members, but it lets me have the value, so I can print it out. So my first dice, the value of it is 6, and it has 6. Oh, I didn't put sides at the end, and my second dice has 12 sides. So here I missed part of my label. And that line's getting too long, so I'm going to bring that down. Okay, and then I can add it down here on the other one too. Okay, now let's see how it runs if it'll print out a little bit better. It's just labeling, right? Part of the label's before the value and part of the label's after. There, the value of my second dice is 3. My second dice has 12 sides. Why did those values change? Because we did all these rolls. So it would just be the value of the very last roll is where they ended up. And that tells us something about the dice. Now we have access to the number of sides and the value.